This morning, we have a live look for you at the Acrisure Amphitheater. It is well into its first season with another concert scheduled for Saturday. But if you've looked at online tickets recently, you may have noticed a lot more blue dots on a venue ticket map, not just at Acrisure. In the music business, those blue dots represent unsold seats, and there is kind of a trend right now that's become so common, it's earned a nickname, Blue Dot Fever. And it may have contributed to some artists canceling their entire tours, not just at Acrisure. So joining us now to explain what is going on in the live music industry is Jeremy Peters. He's an assistant professor of music business at Wayne State University. Jeremy, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. First, let's dive into what this is. What is Blue Dot Fever?
Blue Dot Fever is, as you just mentioned, if you look on a ticketing app, there's unpurchased seats. Those show up as blue dots as compared to the gray seats, the ones that are already purchased. And increasingly, we're seeing a lot more of those blue dots and more seats available.
Yeah, and what is contributing to that? I'm just curious. I mean, I think a lot of people see that and they're like kind of wondering, all right, what's going on with this tour or what's going on with this concert in a particular venue? What does that mean?
I think there's two things going on here. So one is on the fan side. We don't often think about all the things that we're buying when we buy a concert ticket. It's not just the music, but the atmosphere around it, all the choreography on the stage, the lighting, and maybe even for some shows, pyrotechnics, video screens, the staging. All that stuff's really expensive and heavy to move around. The cost of diesel goes up. And so if those tickets don't sell, those artists have to deal with those costs, and maybe when those costs adds up, it becomes more and more difficult to purchase tickets. On the other side, still for the fans, prices are up across the board for everything: gas, food, basics, housing. And if we take a look at wages being relatively stagnant and costs going up, we have to decide things to cut back on, and entertainment ends up being one of those luxury purchases. For the artists themselves, they're seeing concert goers make decisions much later about purchasing tickets, and all that sort of put together leads to some fear for artists like Post Malone downsizing tours, Meghan Trainor, Zayn Malik, Jelly Roll, Pussycat Dolls. I know some of those have been related to some cancellations at Acrisure.
Yeah, well, of course, we were just actually looking at some of the blue dots available right now for some of the future concerts at Acrisure. And we want to be clear, too, because a lot of these concerts at Acrisure in their first season are seeing a good number of ticket buys as to what we can see from the Ticketmaster website. But then there are other concerts, like you mentioned. Meghan Trainor completely canceled her season this year, her tour. So did the Pussycat Dolls. You know, when we see a chart filled with blue dots like that, should we automatically just assume a show isn't selling well? Or I guess, what should we be thinking about when we're looking at all those blue dots on the screen?
I don't think we should be thinking that necessarily. There's actually data out there saying, and the CFO of Ticketmaster recently talked about cancellation numbers being about the same as last year. They're not necessarily seeing a demand pullback. It just might have gotten a little bit more focused because of the names of some of the artists. And obviously for mega fans of those artists, it's a big deal. It's definitely gotten a lot more press this year, for sure. But Bruno Mars sold out concerts recently. Lady Gaga's been adding dates. Noah Kahan sold out his tour. Ariana Grande, Olivia Rodrigo, all have done really well.
Yeah, so does it just kind of matter on who is selling tickets, or is it just kind of more the popular acts right now selling out and everyone else kind of has to scrounge for those extra ticket sales? What do you make of that?
I think it's a matter of not being able to afford to necessarily go to every single concert. Concert tickets are expensive because of all the show that goes on. And so we can't go to all 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 of those concerts, even if we really want to. And it's sort of shaking out in a lot of different ways. And some of those artists aren't willing to necessarily assume all the risk. They'd probably eventually sell out those shows by the day of performance. But at the point that they have to make a decision to invest more money to keep the tour going, they may be deciding to pull back because it's a safer decision for them at that point.
Yeah, and of course, I want to mention the two tours that have canceled at Acrisure, which we've mentioned. The Pussycat Dolls and Meghan Trainor have pulled out of their tours. They had dates at Acrisure. Now, that is just 2 out of 40-some that are planned this season for Acrisure Amphitheater. And when we're looking at the big scheme of things here, do you think that should be a red flag to folks here in the Grand Rapids area? Or, are we still seeing these ticket sales that can support the amphitheater on this side? What's your take on that?
I don't think it's a red flag. It's a brand new, beautiful amphitheater, great performance space. I think that Michigan is increasingly a place that artists do want to perform at. There's sort of this old notion that Michigan is a place that tours skip. I don't think that's necessarily the case. With Grand Rapids' proximity to Chicago, it's an easy tour date to add in that space. It's just a couple of artists that have maybe canceled. And some are downsizing their tours, which has some effects on, smaller artists who want to play in those smaller clubs, but some people are downsizing shows into smaller venues. And that might provide some challenges for up and coming artists who already have dates in those smaller venues if their date gets canceled because bigger artist X decides to, make their tour in a smaller venue.
Interesting. On the flip side of that, Acrisure being in its first season, I'm curious on your take. How does this excite the music industry when we have a brand new venue in a city that is growing exponentially year after year? How does that excite the music industry for the possibilities on the west side of Michigan?
I think it puts a clear spot on the map for Grand Rapids and the west side of Michigan as a place to come and play. I think that it makes it a clear tour stop, an easy tour stop for artists to consider as they're booking those tours. These tours get booked, years in advance. So I don't think that maybe even this little blip, if things change in the economy, if things change going forward, I don't think there's much to be worried about. And I think there's probably excitement. I don't think the amphitheater would be built necessarily if they weren't pretty confident that this would be an amazing place for people to come and play.
Yeah, I think just a lot of people had a little confusion. They have that 40-some concert dates this season, their first season out. And then you see, folks like Meghan Trainor and the Pussycat Dolls kind of pull out. Then I think that's kind of where all that anxiety comes from. So thank you so much for kind of shedding some light on what that blue dot fever is, what that means, and what that means for our folks at home.
Those cancellations happen all the time. It's happened forever.
Interesting. All right. We'll have to leave the conversation there. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.